from an individual level to fulfill desires, and we want support from the whole universe. That includes everything we've ever been. So I don't know how many of you have had that experience of talking with a friend or saying yourself, oh yeah, that me in the past, that was like another lifetime. That was so far back there. Well, actually, yeah, right? Right? That's like, I'm never going back to that again. And it's true. We'll never go backwards. You know, once a person has learned what a pleasure it is to have, like a good, healthy routine, who would ever want to get off of a good, healthy routine? On the one hand. On the other hand, what we were in the past is still with us now. So that sense of that I kind of don't like who I was, because I found out I was carrying that. I kind of didn't like who I was, and I was very happy to let go of what I've been in the past in order to embrace who and what I am coming into the future. But what I realized is that all of it's me. All of it's the self. And just as little children have this amazing kind of attunement with natural law, and they have blessings, they're protected. A lot of times children are kind of protected, and they have that experience of being like beautiful children. All children are beautiful. All children, without exception, all people are beautiful. But there's something lovely about that kind of innocent freshness of the physiology when it's little, but not ripened nervous system enough to even really appreciate that condition. So each phase of life's existence and manifestation is a phase of divine interaction. So each one is precious, and each one has something special to offer into this moment. So what we did was we went back, and so recapping for everybody and redoing that healing, another layer of it for everyone who watched yesterday is watching today, and for everyone who's here today who wasn't yesterday, we get that fullness of yesterday plus today's on this. But we're going back into each moment of moving forward on the path of evolution, and in that spot where we let go of what we have been, bringing in the quality of integration. So it's not that we reject and let go and eliminate what we've been. It's that it becomes integrated, it's embraced, it adds fullness, the new condition and state of now I can play a musical instrument, or now I can drive a car, or whatever it is. Each time we take a new step forward, that becomes enhanced by what we've been. It's not a rejection of it. And we can all look back and we can say, oh, I went through this awful phase in my life where I wasn't happy, or I went through this awful phase in my life where I smoked cigarettes, or, whatever those awful phases were. In and around what we identify as the awful part, there was still divine being having a human experience. So that is the value that gets integrated. So we get the power of divinity coupled with the present situation and the present capability to desire and think and act effectively and successfully. Because if there's a part of me back there that I look back, like for me, my teenage years were really pretty tough. And I look back in my teenage years, I'm like, ugh, me as a teenager, ugh. I don't even want to think about it. Ugh, it was all, like that. What does that do to me as a teenager? And me as a teenager is still here. So it's this loving embrace of integration, loving embrace. And what the fire element does is it moves in and it transforms in that area. And it does it for the physiology. I may look back at my teenage self and go, ugh, me as a teenager. But you know what? There were things about being a teenager that were splendid. So it doesn't hurt to integrate those yummy parts, the beautiful parts. And the bits, like I know now as a fully ripened nervous system that I'm not going to go back and smoke a cigarette. So I don't have to worry about that part of it. We don't have to worry about the parts that we don't like. What we're doing is we're integrating all the being. We integrate the being aspect. So there, and I just want to feel that moving through for everybody and all the layers of self, more or less for the physical body. I'm seeing it happening at a physical level, etheric level of self. It's clearing habits in the mental and emotional levels of physiology, particularly subconscious and unconscious levels of the mind, where we have these little vicious cycle habits of, oh, me as a teenager, ugh, no. So just it like undoes those, it unravels them. I'm also seeing influx of a kind of an activation or liveliness in the etheric physiology, which is kind of the body of prana, the body of the energy body of the self. And there's a great purifying potential in the etheric body, because it looks so much like the physical body, and yet it's made of just pure energy. It's able to move out the imbalances that are stuck physically. So it moves out if there's, for example, a little buildup of some physical toxin in the brain, for instance. And I'm seeing with some people, there's some up in the head area. Sometimes there can be some like neurochemicals, especially if we worry, if there's a lot of worry, or so it gets into the brain. And then what happens is the etheric body, made of energy, material, can move to release those toxins. And that as that happens, it works the way beautiful, great canyons are formed. And that's also a little bit, we went into detail about that yesterday, was the formation of the canyons. There's the blood and the ventricle fluid in the body are able to function more efficiently when there's a little bit of warmth with them. So, and what we did yesterday was we took that fire, which is the transformative energy of being, and the healing refined it and refined it and refined it to its finest level. And when it's refined to its finest level, it ultimately becomes love. It becomes love. Fire becomes love. Love is quite the transformer, isn't it? It transforms life, I would say, more dramatically and more profoundly, and sustains life more dramatically and more profoundly than any other emotion. We can say, well, negative emotions, war, and then life is all changed. But look, love manages to carry humanity even through war situations to new generations. It's a huge power. It's a huge power in the universe too, and it's experienced by all levels of beings, all levels. One of the reasons I've got Mount Shasta up here is because the celestial body and the pranic body of this being is all this life force. It goes all the way through from Mount Shasta, from its celestial level of self up to the etheric level of self. You can, the devas, or the refined intelligences of creation, are very highly integrated, and massive quantities. We could see it from hundreds of miles away. The radiance of light from this structure moves through the whole environment. It's powerful and extremely rejuvenating, rebirthing. And what it's doing for our physiologies today is it's rebirthing these physiologies, rebirthing our comprehension of the 5 elements as they exist in the physiology. Because successfully manifesting desires in the relative means creating a kind of a pliable flow of energy from these deeper levels of the self. These are where the desires rise up. Even from being, we can say divine being has a desire to experience life as human, and to let us have our own desires, and to create that surprise effect. And then it has to interface with the physical material level of creation in order for the desire to be fulfilled. So what we're doing is clearing impressions for the person who asked this question, and for all of us, clearing impressions And it looks like in the prefrontal cortex, there's some clearing going on up around those, that occipital frontal cortex area as well, which is part of the prefrontal cortex. We're clearing habits. There's a habit of slight recoiling from the dopaminergic flush. And I feel that that habit of recoiling goes back to early childhood. And I know it's common for a lot of people in the group that when kids are little, they don't have filters, right? They're hilarious because of that. You know, when they're happy, they're so happy. When they're sad, they're so sad. When they're, you know, they're hot, they're really, when they're, you know, hungry, they're so hungry. It's like that, no filters. So what happens is when the child experiences that level of deep prophetic attunement with nature, when the child is in its is glowing in its highest level. I remember my son was my oldest son, my first child. He was about, I think, like maybe a year old, around 12 months or something. One morning, and we were running a TM center, and I had dressed him up in this cute little outfit. And I'm telling you, the child glowed. He just glowed. He was so in himself, and he was so happy. And it was a quiet, stable, self-contained happiness in him. He wasn't letting it out, filters everywhere. He was glorious. And I brought him down to the potluck dinner, and no one could take eyes off of this being, this beaming, radiant being that was this big. It was just the most luscious thing. And so that level of experience, that's the level of experience that we're recreating in ourselves. It's not so much how the actual events come out. You know, how did the dinner come out? Nobody even remembers, but everyone remembers the radiance of that being, because that was, I'm sure the dinner came out fine. but the radiance of that being and the capability of that being to perfectly, exquisitely express divinity. It wasn't what he did. It wasn't that he had successful action necessarily. He probably did manage to eat, but that wasn't the reason. The reason was that level of radiance. And so that was beaming through the physical material level of self. And so that's what's really opening up. This rearrangement in the filtering levels of the physiology is to allow the radiance of being to work its way up into the physical material level, so that the physical becomes more pliable, more malleable, more workable, more responsive to desires. More responsive. So this is what's moving through this area. This is we can say this is the sankalp for the healing, is to increase pliability at the relative level of creation, so that the relative level of creation is able to effortlessly reflect the universal reality and cosmic evolution in divine intention in such a way as to support desires fulfilled, fulfillment of desires. And one of the energies that's coming forth, and it's interesting because this is an energy that I met on this particular mountain, is the passion that we experience before birth, right? Because before we take the human form, we have this knowledge that we're going to do this great, exciting thing, which is to become a human. And at that time, all the challenges that we're going to face are planned out. All the karma that we're going to carry is planned out. You know, all this, what we often experience when we're in the life as difficulties, are planned out ahead of time in the spirit world. And in the spirit world, when we plan them out, it's crazy exciting. It's like, oh, I'm going to have a completely dysfunctional mom. Oh, cool. I mean, I didn't. I had a nice mom, but you know what I'm saying? Oh, or I'm going to, I'm going to get really sick when I'm in my 20s. All right, man, that's going to like really power me forward in my evolution. So at that time, there's this feeling of excitement about the whole thing. The thing is that that quality of excitement is founded on a sense of stability that I am so intimately integrated with the being, my individuality. Individuality and being are so integrated as one thing that even if I get horribly sick when I'm in my 20s, it's going to be amazing because I'm going to come through that with like gangbusters. I'm going to barrel through that with such amazingness, and it's going to support an experience for me as an individual and me as a wholeness and totality of creation of how this process is recreated to fulfill cosmic needs and individual needs at the same time, that it's going to be amazing. It's going to be amazing. It's going to be something that I will always, memory of which I will always cherish and I will treasure, and I will never forget what I learned from that experience. And that gets us back to the element of learning. And that you can't learn when you're a being of light and everything is light and you're every single tiny, tiny little impulse of self is instantly manifested. What's to learn? So we're here, we get to learn, we get to have surprises, and we get to surprise the creation because we all come in with a purpose that's very simple and set, and it's going to happen no matter what. And so everything else we do is like, it's an exciting surprise for the universe. So that passionate energy, looking at it from the level of the gap here, and I'm just watching how it's affecting and influencing the subtler levels of the physiology, the subtle sheaths of the body, and how when that energy is present, it washes, it's undoing the habits in the brain of falling back into, oh, I had this amazing achievement. All right. Oh no, I have to kind of like, it's not okay. There's something, I can find something bad in that achievement. Or I can't, all right, but I can't really show that I'm so happy about it. You know, there's like that pulling back energy that's there. And even the pulling back is part of the learning process, and it's part of the brilliance of who you are.